soil, and the composition of artwork. I chose to focus on science and the arts because they happen to be two of my greatest loves in life. I'm a biology major, and I've always been passionate about the arts. However, the topics of science and art may not be so far apart as you might think. In fact, research has shown that there's an incredible natural connection between science and the arts. And if you think about it, masterpieces of creative brilliance are all around us every day. Just look outside the window at the trees blowing in the wind, to the symphonies of a pond of bullfrogs, or the choreography of a school of dolphins. All of nature reflects this inward beauty that artists throughout centuries have tried to capture. Scientists even, like Maria Sibylla Merian and Ernest Haeckel, have used their artistic talent, as shown in this picture by Ernest Haeckel from 1904, to show this immediate connection, and they've made significant contributions in both the scientific and artistic fields. Specifically, though, there's a natural connection between the visual arts, such as painting, drawing, and sculpting, and the natural sciences. Let me show you just a few examples of what I mean. Here we see a photograph of the fields in the Czech Republic. If you notice the incredible lines, green and gold, like a woven tapestry. This is a photograph of the Matterhorn Towers in the Swiss Alps, standing against the painted horizon, a giant, beautiful piece of sculpture. Lastly, we see hot springs in East Africa's Afar Depression, like living pools of luminescent watercolors made of millions of living bacteria. Clearly, as you can see from these amazing photographs, there is a strong aesthetic link between the natural world and the visual arts. But that link does not lie solely between the more attractive and appealing aspects of nature. The connection is buried deep in the depths of even the mundane components of nature, like dirt, or soil to be exact. Yes, I found a connection in my research, and I'll explain a bit more about the connection later, but there is an inherent relationship between the visual arts and the properties of soil. Therefore, I chose to center my entire summer project on creating a curriculum that highlights this relationship and that would teach second grade students about it. So with this connection in mind, the purpose was to construct an arts integrated curriculum. And you might be wondering, okay, what is arts integration? Is it like that time in second grade when I learned the song about the life cycle of a butterfly? First comes the egg, then comes the caterpillar. Well, no, that would be more like arts enhancement, which is emphasizing a core content using an art form. However, arts integration goes one step further. It's an approach to learning that focuses both on teaching a core content material and on an art form, finding a harmonious relationship between the two and using one to teach the other and vice versa. It affects all different types of learners, from kinesthetic learning styles to visual learners to even auditory learners. And it also just a fun and creative way to learn. It creates an incredible environment for students. The design that I specifically used to craft my curriculum is a backwards design template created by McTeague and Wiggins. A backwards design focuses on what a teacher desires students to know by the end of a curriculum and works from the finish line to the starting line, creating activities and sample lessons along the way to achieve desired results. So my curriculum, the big idea of my curriculum was composition. What makes up certain things? What are things made up of? And the state standard for second grade science requires students to know that there are at least 3 types of soil: sand, clay, and humus. Not hummus, so don't dip your carrots in it. But the students are to learn about the unique properties of all of these types of soil: color and texture, grain size, and the way water moves through soil, and how that can affect plant growth. And the composition of each soil is going to affect each one of those properties. The art form I chose to integrate was a visual art theme, the elements of visual arts, a fairly basic theme because I'll be teaching second grade science. As you may know, every piece of artwork that you've ever seen is composed of the same 7 elements: line, shape, color, form, texture, value, and space. So just for fun, let's take a quick audience quiz. Can anybody name some of the works represented here? Just shout it out if you know any of the artists.
Jackson Pollock.
Jackson Pollock, great. Vincent Van Gogh. Oh, you got some brilliant audience members. Yes, great job. So like I said, I'll now tell you about the connection that I found between soil properties and the visual arts. As you may have noticed, there's an immediate observable connection. In fact, some of the properties that we use to describe soil use the exact same words that we use for the elements of art, such as color and texture. If you think about specific soils, they have certain colors. Sand is that light tan and has a rough, gritty texture to it. Clay can be that rich, dark red color and it has a silky, smooth texture. But there are also other connections. The element of form, or something that has 3 dimensions, that can be shown by the smaller grains found in clay, for example, can stick together because they are so small. So looking at a property like grain size and relating it to an element like form. Another example is the element of space. If you think about the space between the grains of soil, that is called something called porosity, which is a big word for a second grader to know, but it's essentially how water is able to move through the soil, which affects plant growth. So immediately, we're looking at the connections between visual art and soil properties. One of my examples that I created is titled Mud Paintings, because what kid doesn't like to get his hands dirty and play in the mud? So the lesson involves the use of humus, a soil made of decomposed organic matter mixed with water to create our very own paint. The use of humus helps to show the students the element of value because it has a dark color that is linked to the soil nutrient content. You see, the soil with fewer nutrients is going to have a lighter color, and a soil with more nutrients is going to take on a darker color, thus inherently showing this element of value, or a color's hue change from dark to light. Also, students learn that the more water they add to a paint, the lighter the paint gets. And the less water they add to a paint, the darker a paint stays. So immediately they're learning both about a soil's property and how it can be used to create an art form, and learning about a specific element of visual arts. Students are then asked to use this mud paint to hypothesize in a painting a landscape where they think this type of soil might be found. So also tying in certain environmental and geographical aspects into the lesson. This is an example of a mud painting by a professional artist, Henry Newbick. He just uses mud that he has found around his Louisiana home as a medium. So not quite expecting this type of work out of second grade level, but that's what we're aiming for. And to assess the student's knowledge and understanding, I'll use 3 main types of assessments: rubrics, journals, and the artwork themselves. The rubrics encompass students' behavior, ability to follow instruction. Did they use the materials properly? Were they throwing mud in Sally's face, etc.? The journals are a more open-ended approach. Students will talk about what they liked, what they disliked about the project. And that will also show further understanding of the concepts. In the artwork themselves, although it ranges on a continuum of artistic talent, it will show students' understanding of the concepts and show their creativity, allowing students to express their knowledge in just a fun and exciting way. So the training that I went through this summer was an orientation, as every ArtsBridge scholar went through. I also went to an Arts Integration Institute in Elkton, Maryland, a professional development seminar. And to gain further experience teaching, all of the ArtsBridge scholars peer-taught each other, and also had the opportunity to pilot teach at the Early Learning Center here on campus. The lesson that I taught was a very introductory lesson to a group of 15 second graders. First, we discussed the word composition and the entire idea of what things are made up of. We talked about trees and computers, and we broke down those 2 objects into their respective components. Then we had students draw the parts of both the tree and the parts of the computer. And lastly, we discussed all of the elements of art. And then we went back to the drawings that we had just made, and reflected on how all of our drawings embodied all of the elements of art. So it was just a really fun way to get kids excited about learning. And so the future plans for this project are to be using the curriculum in the fall to teach at Downs Elementary to a class of second grade students, in the hopes of collecting data to analyze and show the benefits of using an arts integrated curriculum to teach kids. So I'd like to just thank Dr. Overby, my senior advisor, and some of the other advisors. I'd like to thank the other ArtsBridge scholars for all their support along the way, for ArtsBridge for funding this program, for the Early Learning Center for allowing us to use the students there and their facilities, and lastly to my parents who are just huge supporters of everything I do in life. And thank you. You've been a great audience. Thanks for hanging in there and listening. And yeah, that's
in your pilot teaching, did you find that any of the information you're presenting was over the kids' heads, or too much?
I was immediately worried that some of it might be, with especially the word like composition, but right off the bat when I asked one kid, when I asked what things are made up of, he raised his hand and said, minuscules. And I said, do you mean molecules? And he said, yeah, minuscules. And I said, wow, these kids are pretty bright. And then another kid started talking about atoms, and so I kind of had to direct them into just the broader idea of things that are made up of other things, and that's what composition really means. But as far as the elements themselves, no, they understood line, shape, color, they understood those things. Thanks. Yes?
So then could you also include information about the chemistry of pigment particles, earth pigments being the same as in the soil and painting?
Yeah, so I think that would be an excellent idea for a higher education level rather than second grade maybe like starting middle school, high school, getting more into the chemistry of the soil, because even the topic of soil nutrients in the lesson about humus and mud was a bit outside of the state standards for second grade, but definitely in the middle school and high school level, taking it even deeper and using chemistry and more specific biological examples would be a great idea. Yeah.
Why did you decide to choose second graders?
I was initially given the second grade classroom at Downs Elementary, and then I was asking the teacher what scientific topics they cover throughout the course of the year, and she said, well, we go through soil in the fall. So I was initially given the topic of soil, but then throughout my research I just found this immediate connection between the visual arts, which happens to be a love of mine, and soil science. So I took that and I ran with it.
So this is sort of a political question, because as you move forward into your own teaching career, making an assumption that's what you're planning to do, I hope, do you think you'd be constrained by school standards more than you'd like to be?
First part, yes, it is an assumption because I am a biology major and I do have hopes of going to med school.
You're such a great
But teaching may come around later in life. Second half of the question, do I think I'd be constrained by state standards? I would say if you'd asked me that question 40 years ago, maybe. But not that I would have been alive to answer it. I really believe that state standards and with introductions of things such as STEM and STEAM, that state standards are progressive. They're understanding that there is a need to incorporate the arts. There is a need to find connections between all the subjects. And so I really do believe that I wouldn't be constrained by the state standards. I didn't feel that way specifically in creating these lessons. So thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Sorry, Dr. Fritz.
Oh.
Dr. Fritz led the Arts Integration Institute, which I attended. He's a great man. Love him.
I must say it's a superb project. And to answer the question about constraints, no. Constraints on the core curriculum, no, it will not. In fact, as he alluded to, the connections that are made points toward transdisciplinary learning, where students have a vocabulary from one subject to the next. They can talk about the elements of soil They can talk and refer to the correlations intelligently to the elements of the visual art. And I must say that this lends itself beautifully to music too. I mean, all the artworks that you showed, there's music during that period to go along with this, and all the elements that you stressed, that could be a next step. But this was beautifully done. And his character as a teacher, he's a natural teacher. I can vouch for a week of seeing him in the classroom. He would have the kids under his hand, and he would be a kid knight.
One last question for you. Can we steal these ideas for Terrific Tuesday?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay.